Thanks for tuning into the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
I'm Maul.
And I'm Pops.
And welcome back to our NFL episode. Got Thursday night football tonight, Steelers, Browns. But before we get into it, I did see a little trivia stat I'll throw out to you guys. It was since the year 2020, so the past 4 years. What is the highest percentage? So it ranked them by percent in terms of it went, and the percents aren't crazy high. It was like 0.1 for the Chiefs, who I'll go ahead and give away that answer. And then the bottom teams, it ranged from 10 to 13%. And it was the percent of draft picks that do not play a down in the NFL. So what teams had the worst draft guys, that in terms of guys that they drafted that never played a down in the NFL? The percent of those, like I said, about 10 to 13%. Can you take a wild stab?
We're guessing the team.
Mm-hmm.
Titans.
Nope.
Carolina.
Carolina was one. Looking at the bottom three, Carolina was the worst.
Would New York have another one?
So the Jets.
Wasn't the Jets. This one's, if you think about how bad they've been the last few years, but you'll probably have like a stigma about what they were in terms of a team, but the past 4 years they've been historically bad.
Browns.
It's in that region of the Northeast, but it's not the Giants or the Jets.
Browns.
The Patriots?
It's the Patriots. Yeah. Patriots are the second worst team. And then the third place team, we were just talking about them.
Cowboys.
The Cowboys, which I think is like, it's the reason why you sort of look at all three of those teams. You're like, hey, why do they suck? And it's like, well, you make bad decisions on draft day. So much so that you make bad decisions and it's your guys aren't even touching the field.
How long ago did that go back?
To 2020.
See, I was going to say, from like the Patriots standpoint, Belichick was kind of known on like, he didn't care about draft day. His whole goal was to like get rid of draft picks for guys that were proven, you know what I mean? Like guys he knew had already played in the NFL and he knew he could fit into his system. So it kind of makes sense since you think some of the guys that they did draft probably were like in the later rounds anyway. You know, they didn't have a whole lot of first round draft picks. One, because they were winning Super Bowls every year, but then two, they were trading away their other draft picks. You know what I mean? So the guys that they were drafting were probably later pickups anyway, that like they give them a shot during preseason and they're like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. We're going to trade you for somebody else.
Well, and I played devil's advocate off of Bill Belichick. You know, everybody thought it was just Tom. Like, I played devil's advocate that Bill Belichick was just sabotaging the franchise because him and Robert Kraft can't get along anymore.
I saw the hot take right now is that Bill Belichick's going to take over the Jags, which I feel like would be bad for all parties involved.
As the coach or like the GM?
The coach, which I'm sure that I don't think Bill's going to go somewhere where he doesn't have full autonomy over the decisions being made, which everyone was like,
why I asked the GM question.
Yeah. I thought that you just meant just as the GM, but they were floating it around at the Monday night game when the Cowboys got absolutely walloped, that they were like, maybe Dallas should go after Belichick. And I was like, we clearly don't know who the Cowboys are on this program, because there's no way they're ever going to leave all the decisions up to Bill Belichick with the Jones family still in charge. Yeah. And I say that just because even with Jerry, if he's no longer in the picture here in a few years, they're still going to control the decisions.
Yeah, if you think he didn't get along with Jimmy Johnson, I would love to be a fly on the wall when him and Belichick are having discussions.
God, ain't that a take? Yeah. Which if he had gotten along with Jimmy Johnson, they probably win. I'd say at least maybe 2 more than what they already have, if not maybe possibly 3. Like, you look at the cast that they had in the late 90s, like their only competition there at the end was the Packers with Favre, but the Cowboys were just running, sort of like the Chiefs right now. They were running away with it. No one could really touch them. There were teams out there that played them well, but I mean, they had an all-star static cast during that time. But with that Thursday night, we got Steelers-Browns. We're, I think, 4 weeks removed from Winston actually looking really good against the Ravens. And since that point, the Browns have regressed to being the same old Browns.
Somebody changed his prescription or something.
Dude, yeah, the motivational talks wore off real quick, especially with Taysom Hill just running all over him last week. Pittsburgh's -3.5. I think this is Maul got the take right, which is the Steelers doing well in the division. I happily will admit I was woefully wrong because I had the Browns finishing second. Steelers look pretty good. What are your guys' thoughts on the game?
I'm surprised. I am and I'm not. Like the 3.5 line is a little odd to me since the Steelers have been doing so well and the Browns are terrible. The problem with the Steelers is you can't score touchdowns. Like if it weren't for Boswell, they haven't scored points in like the last 2 games.
And they still win. That's the crazy part.
I mean, it's a testament to their defense, but like they need to be able to get the ball in the end zone because that's not going to cut it in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well, this is the tried and true method of the Steelers. You'll do well enough to get into the playoffs, but you think about the teams that they're going to have to face in the playoffs. It's like just what you said. Field ain't going to work against the Chiefs.
It's that whole like if you wasn't with us when we were 9-8, well, don't be with us when we're 9-8 again next year.
It's true. I like what Russell Wilson has looked like this year. I mean, George Pickens, if he's not catching balls, he's just fighting the other opponent, which I actually like. But they need another wide receiver pretty bad, which they didn't get. So,
well, I mean, they were able to get Mike Williams involved, a couple weeks ago. He got his first touchdown catch with the it was 2 weeks ago after the trade deadline happened. I'm in the same boat. Like I was not the last couple of years of Russ with the Seahawks, and then obviously the 2-year disaster there in Denver. Like I was not expecting to see what we've been seeing out of him so far, and we questioned. We're like, hey, you're winning with Fields. Why are we taking him out? Because we all said it. Wilson can throw better, but Fields can obviously change up to how the defense plays him because he can run with his legs, unlike Russ anymore. But Russell knows how to win, and I mean they're riding this train, and yet again we have another season where Tomlin's going to have a winning record.
Yeah, funny. This is so you kind of brought it up. This is a tangent, but related to you said the Steelers wide receivers. Remember they had Deontay Johnson, right? And like Deontay Johnson has had this like aura about like, oh, he just like there's just like something missing. But like if he had someone good to throw to him, he'd be a lot better. He goes to Carolina, and obviously he doesn't have anybody to throw to him, but he's supposed to be the number one guy, still not doing anything. Now he goes to Baltimore, and he's like still just kind of non-existent. And it's just like, 3 separate teams with 3 separate quarterbacks and 3 separate like play styles, and he leaves, and Pickens is clearly the guy there. Like he's clearly the guy. So I think it's funny that, again, we just talk about certain guys around the league. He's starting to run out of excuses here. And like, why aren't you producing like, the way everybody expected you to produce?
He's almost a mirror image of Chase Claypool when he left Pittsburgh, that everyone was like, oh, he's this guy. He'll do well with Chicago. He'll do well with Miami, and every place he ended up, terrible. Speaking of Chicago, let's go ahead and run this pain train through Pops' heart.
I'm glad
Vikings.
I'm glad we're getting it out of the way early.
Vikings, Bears. Minnesota, surprisingly, is only -3.5. I saw a stat, which I had to go back and check, and it's pretty surprising. Middle of October to now, Caleb Williams' touchdown and interception stats are the exact same.
Yep.
Like, he
that.
hasn't. Yeah.
What is
painful.
It? 9-2? 9-2?
I think it's 9-5. But It's funny that we're now like getting all the way back to where we're talking about the Vikings, because when you signed off an episode a few weeks ago, you were like, this is about to be the downfall of the Vikings. And since that point, the Bears have not won a game.
That's
I,
a
was,
fact.
I was gonna bring it up. We didn't have the heart to tell you, Pops, but after you signed off, me and Dutch were talking about it, and we were like, if anything, we think that this is going to be the
Those
downfall
Bears
of the
fall off.
Bears.
Yeah.
And we both agreed on it. And I'll say this about the Bears: their defense is obviously still there. Like that's a good thing. You might not like it, Pops, because you're like a fan and you want them to win now. But I do think like they're still in an okay spot. Like they're not. I almost would say they shouldn't make the playoffs this year, just because it would give them this like, oh, see, we knew what we were doing and we've got the right pieces kind of in their mind, because it's like, see, we still made the playoffs. And they don't. Like, I think that they don't have the right pieces in place. However, they are still progressing, maybe not as fast or as quickly as everybody would have wanted them to, but they are getting better. So I think they can build on that. And by them missing the playoffs, it gives them the wake up call of like, okay, even though we made all these moves in the offseason, they weren't the right moves. Let's figure out some of these pieces that we need to work out, aka offensive line, aka wide receiver, and it'll help Caleb Williams continue to develop. Like I think if y'all went out and went on a run and made the playoffs, it would be this like, all right, it's not broke, let's not try to fix it, when it clearly is broke and there are things that need to be fixed. However, I don't want them to get like completely blown out here, because then that usually goes, well, you start giving up on people too early, and I still do think that there's potential there. So I think they're in an okay spot. It might take a few years, and again, as like a fan, you might not like it, but I think they're going to be okay because their defense is still keeping them in games.
So this is my take. I look at it from a realistic lens, and I wasn't expecting for Caleb to be the savior. Like, yeah, we brought in all the pieces with DeAndre, with Keenan Allen picking up a Dunze. Like I saw that there, but you still got to have those rookie struggles. That we've been witnessing all year. Now, I think last week I'll be dead honest. I thought we were going to get boat raced by the Packers. Like that first drive when Jordan Love goes right down the field, touchdown, I'm like, sweet, here goes this game. Like this is just going to keep going. And I will say my perspective was that the defense was the lymphatic against the Green Bay Packers. It wasn't necessarily the offense. The offense was able to move the ball, because I texted you guys. I said, I will bet y'all right now the Bears don't put up 250 yards of offense. Like I bet that. And we had that in the first half. So I was like, holy crap, like maybe this guy, it sucks that he was tagged to Carolina calling plays for Bryce Young. But guess what? So is Sam Darnold, so were Baker Mayfield in Carolina. Look what they're doing now. So maybe it was that. He was just a diamond in the rough. I don't know. I don't think we have enough on Thomas Brown to know if this is the new offense, but I was truly impressed in the fact that it came down to that last second field goal against the Packers. I was happy. Like moving into the division, go back and look at years previous. The Bears always win in the division. We lose to the Packers, so we'll go 0-2 to the Packers. But most of the time, we'll either sweep one of the teams, whether Vikings or Lions, or we'll go 1-1. So, like, I still see us being a 500 team. I know they got the strongest strength of schedule, and the Detroit Lions look like they're a team that can't lose. I like being at Soldier Field this weekend against the Vikings. I'm still going to hold with my Bears because the Vikings have had their struggles. Just go back to 2 weeks ago when they played the Jaguars. They couldn't even cover, and Detroit boat raced them by 50. So I do actually like the Bears at home this weekend.
That was going to be my next question. I feel like the Vikings started off 5-0, lost 2, but since that point they won 3 again. They're 8-2, and I personally feel like the Vikings are sort of being looked at as this like, they're still the Vikings. Like no one really talks about them because the Lions are in the division, but I still would sit back and tell you that the Vikings came within a field goal of beating the Lions when they played them. That was a tough game. You guys correctly picked the Lions in that game, but the Vikings were leading there for a little bit. What are you guys' thoughts on the Vikings?
Yeah. They almost remind me of the Vikings. Like I want to say it was like 2, maybe 3 years ago with Kirk when they were like 8-0 in one score games. Like nobody's taking anything away from them. They're a good team, but at the same time, like they could absolutely show up any given week and just look terrible and like not be a good team. So I think that's kind of the, like you said, one primarily it's because they're sitting behind the Lions, and if you're not in first place, it's kind of like who even are you? But they have talent. Like they're clearly talented on both sides of the ball. However, they're definitely not like the superstar. I wouldn't have picked them to be, one of two of the last undefeated teams, kind of deal. So Pops is right. If the offense continues developing like they did from last week, and the defense actually shows up, like we all know, Darnold in any given week can, see ghosts and not play well. So.
Well, and let's not forget that Will Levis threw a 98-yard touchdown against the Vikings last weekend. Let's not let that slide under the rug.
There were some really bad calls in that game too that cost the Titans pretty dearly in terms of just making it a game. Before we move on to the next game, I will ask, since we're probably not going to record a Thanksgiving episode with everybody traveling, you talking about the Bears in the division. Are the Bears going to do the Thanksgiving miracle and beat the Lions, and the Lions continue to lose on Thanksgiving to make it a tradition?
Man, if you would have asked me this last season, I would say yes, but I don't see it this year. I just don't. I will be content if the Bears keep it within 10.
Until the Lions win on Thanksgiving. This is like, for me, next week determines like how in on the Lions I am, because if they lose to the Bears, I'm gonna be like, nope, they're not winning the Super Bowl. Like it'll be the same old Lions to drop again on Thanksgiving.
Didn't they do it last year? Like,
yeah,
they were good last year.
They were good last year and lost. It was just like, God bless. For as good as you guys are, you can't win on Thanksgiving. It's just a tradition.
Well, so, it was that terrible halftime show, Jack Harlow or whatever.
I thought you were talking about that Baby Ray when it was like the room was spinning around her.
Oh, God.
Even Detroit fans were booing that. Speaking of Detroit, they got the Colts. After a few weeks of Joe Flacco said, well, if we'll lose, we'll just lose with our first rounder. So put him back in there. So they're 9-1 against the Colts. Detroit's -7 and going to Indy. Any chance the Colts slow down Detroit this week?
No.
I mean, I can't say I see it happening. I think the Colts. I think the Colts are better than their record shows. I think they've lost a few close games, but right now, I mean, the Lions are just so hot, dude. They're just, when you throw 5 picks and still win a game, like, I mean, it's just they've got it right now. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that this is their season to lose. So,
well,
really.
Man, the piece though that you said is like you think their record's better than what it, or their team's better than what it shows for it. They almost lost to the Jets, man. Like, and the Jets were all like, man, this was a terrible move by Woody Johnson. I just don't see it out of the Colts.
We talk about the Lions. I'll just bring it up real quick. We'll get to them. I think they may be on a bye this. No, they're playing the Packers later. You talk about like 2 teams that went to the NFC Championship game. Yeah. Like if any team should have been down and had a bad year, it'd been the Lions. It was like, we fumbled it away. We were so close to the Super Bowl, didn't make it happen. Compared to the Niners, who get there, still lose to the Chiefs again. But it's like the lingering effects of last season. Like you look at the Niners and you're like, dude, this looks like a team that's like just out of it. Like can't beat the Seahawks, can't win games. And then you get the Lions on the other hand, where it looks like from last year, you have to admit that they appear to be on a mission that we're going to the Super Bowl this year.
I think the primary, you're right. Like, I don't necessarily equate that to like the lingering effects of the season. I think of it as just like, look at the Niners, dude. Like injuries galore. Galore. Like you've got the best running back in the league and he misses half the season, right? Like that's hard to swallow. You finally pay one of your top wide receivers all this money. He's out for the season, right? Like there's just a lot of working against the Niners right now.
Purdy's out this weekend. Kittle could be too.
Yeah, where you look on the other side of the ball, like the Lions are healthy and attacking. You know what I mean? So like
on
there's
offense.
there's definitely like a momentum thing there that I think is at play, and it's not so much of the lingering effects from last season.
Next game up, Pats Dolphins. Dolphins minus 7.5. Tua has been improving. There's a slim chance that maybe the Dolphins could, ride a high with him coming back and win some games, as long as it was. I think me and Maul were watching the game a few weeks ago that Tua throws a pick and his going in move was, let me use my head to make to make this tackle. You just hear Dolphins fans around the world being like, no, why do you keep doing this? The Pats, on the other hand, have just, I mean, I feel like Dennis Greenwood's like they are who we thought they were. Like, they're just not a good football team. I think Drake May's shown some good signs here and there, but overall it ties back into that draft pick thing of they just had, you look at especially the wide receiver, even when Belichick was the head coach, they couldn't draft a wide receiver to save their lives. And they fall into that trap again. They can't get any help on the outside from a receiver, and that's killed them this year. The Dolphins, on the other hand, I know Maul will feel this way just because he has him on his fantasy roster, but it's, where's Tyreek Hill been for this whole year? Like, that's the guy that I keep waiting every week for him to have like a 200-yard game. I just don't know where in the world he's been in that offense.
Now I know that Tua got hurt, but did you see that there was a meme that came out and said stats when arrested, and he puts up 200 yards and 2 tutties, whatever that game was, and then ever since it's just been absolute hot garbage. So it's like, looks like we need the police to haze Tyreek again.
I'm sure we got plenty that would happily fill the role of that meant that their bet hit that week.
Yeah,
the Dolphins.
And man, I feel like with the Patriots, that they Ramondre Stevenson, started out the season looking really strong, and now it seems like they don't have a run offense at all. The man hasn't even cracked over 600 yards this late in the season. It feels like it's completely dropped off. Where Drake May is trying to hold up the offense because he didn't play the first couple of games, and now he's thrown for I think almost 1,300 yards, and he's still got a positive TD to interception ratio. Like, Drake May does have some positive upside, but just like you said, there's nothing there to complement him on that offense.
Yeah, I mean, they've been keeping games close. Like, I'll say closer. Like, as bad of a football team as we think they are, they're not really getting like blown out in
And
any
they
game.
beat the Bears.
But you're right. There's like way too many pieces missing. Like, they're not a good complete football team. They definitely have some high points for them. But yeah, they're kind of just in this, I don't want to say rebuilding because I don't even know if they are rebuilding, but we'll say a non-competitive type of environment, which, like you said, like the Dolphins aren't too far out of a wild card spot here. And if Tua can stay healthy, they can kind of overcome, like, make an excuse for, hey, we didn't get a lot of wins because Skylar Thompson was leading the charge. They might, be able to string something here together and make a run.
You bring up non-competitive football teams. Next game up, Bucks at Giants. Danny Dimes is now the third string QB.
Fourth.
He's fourth now?
Yeah, he's fourth now.
I did love this meme in The Dark Knight where it's like the Joker has this dude tied up on top of all this money, and it was like Daniel Jones, and he slides down. He goes, "Where's the Italian?" And that sums it up, which I think it was either you or Maul that sent out that meme that was like Giants Cowboys on Thanksgiving. This is going to be like the world's best snap I've ever had.
Generational nap, yeah.
I sit back. Tampa's minus 6.5. I feel like if I was at the Beau Rivage this weekend, I'd be doubling down on that number.
Listen, the hard part with the Bucks is, one, their defense isn't very good. Like, they have decent players, but for whatever reason, they're just not stopping anybody. And the offense, we know Baker's slinging it. The problem is they got so many missing pieces. I do think Mike Evans is coming back this week, so that will help. I don't know if he is or not. I think that was like what he was slated for.
He's off the injury report.
So there you go. That'll definitely help. But Baker not having those pieces has been very, very evident of like that the level of the Bucks play has significantly dropped. I know they took the Chiefs to overtime, but I'm not saying that the Giants are going to win. Like I'm just saying like the Bucks. I think they're a better football. They're another one where I think they're a better football team than their record is showing. But like without those pieces on offense, it's difficult to really trust them.
For me,
Go ahead.
the thing that I'm seeing, they get up early in these games. Like you go back, they got up against Atlanta again, and the lead got blown. They're all one-score games, minus the game against Baltimore where they lost by 10. I mean, these are one-score games. San Francisco kicked a field goal 2 weeks ago, as time expired. The Chiefs, the whole at the coin flip between him and Mahomes, he knew as soon as Mahomes got it, like the game was over. And I mean, that played true. All these games are coming down to one possession.
Yeah, they're hanging in there.
And they're absolutely hanging in there. And that's the thing. I think getting Mike Evans back, and then with somebody who could potentially, obviously not replace Godwin, but at least be a consistent weapon for Baker. I think they're going to go on a run as they continue out through the rest of their season, because they've got the Giants, they've got the Panthers, they've got the Raiders. So they're right there, should be 3 wins right out the gates. Chargers going to be tough, but then they got Cowboys, Panthers again, and Saints. So they have possibility to only lose 2 more games the rest of the season.
That's the play, dude. I was gonna say if you're gonna hammer the something for that game, hammer Mike Evans. His receiving yards right now are 55.5. I'm taking like triple that, dude. Like he's gonna go for like 180 and 3 touchdowns.
Make some money on that bet. Speaking of not making any money, Cowboys can't even fill the home game. So they go on the road to the Commanders this week. Washington's minus 10. Yeah, this should be Washington by a mile. I feel like this is a state after the Cowboys got drilled by the Texans. I sort of feel like you're going to watch the Cowboys quit for the rest of the season. It's just like a matter of time before they fire Mike McCarthy, and somehow in the off season, Cowboy fans will yet again be like, "Oh no, this is going to be our year next year." It's like we're getting all these, we're figuring it out.
I just saw a meme. It was like the remainder of the Cowboys schedule and how many games they got left. 7, 6. It was like we're 6 games away from Cowboys fans talking about how it's next year's our year.
It's true.
Yeah, it's
you got
they can't run the ball and they can't stop the run. I mean, their offensive line or their linemen on both sides are just. I don't say that they're bad, because like I feel like they've historically been good and like the guys they have been okay, but for whatever reason this season they can't run the ball and they can't stop the run. And if you think you're going to go out and throw the ball with Cooper Rush 50 times a game and be competitive, it ain't happening. Like it's over.
Which they're sitting back and they paid CD all this money. Dak still wants a new deal, and then they got to pay Micah Parsons. Like I don't know where I know a lot of people are saying that Genty is going to go to the Cowboys in the draft, which I can certainly see if he falls to them, and the likelihood of a running back falling to them in the draft is probably pretty high, just based upon running backs not going. But
they're also going to have like the 3rd pick.
Yeah, I mean. You look at the Cowboys, them and the Giants, you're really not that far apart in terms of the overall what's going on. Like both of them, Dak still has a lot of money tied up in him. Mm-hmm. Neighbors is going to get paid just like CD did, and you're going to tie up money in him. You look at the Giants, they've got Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns. You got to pay somebody. Cowboys have Lawrence and Parsons. I sit back and I look at both of the teams and I go, they're the same team. Like they both have terrible leadership that put money in places they didn't need to put it in. Didn't play payers. The Giants didn't pay Saquon. The Cowboys should have paid Derrick Henry to coming in. It's just colossal mistakes from both sides of the organization that I sit back and I go, this is why you're going to be terrible for the next 5 to 10 years. Easy.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of called it with Quinn. Like I know Pops did, that losing Dan Quinn was a huge piece of the puzzle for the Cowboys that they didn't figure. Pops, I will say, he sent it out in text where he's like, they really need to get rid of Mike Zimmer. From a football standpoint, I'm like, yeah, you're correct. But from an anti-Cowboys fan, I'm like, no, you keep that man in Dallas for as long as humanly possible. He's doing a tremendous job.
They can stay bad forever.
Yeah. Next game up, Chiefs-Panthers. Chiefs finally get beat by the Bills last week. They have a chance for either the best rebound possible or to start like I saw a picture that was like, you cannot tell me that this Chiefs team does not resemble last year's Eagles team at 10-1, where it's just like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, where it's like, oh yeah, we had a slip up, but then they just keep slipping.
Yes. Like you think about, I saw that if you reversed the 1-score games this year and had the other team win, the Chiefs have only won like 2 games and the Jags are in the top of the AFC. I sit back and I look at it. This is a great bounce back game for the Chiefs, but I also think it's a tremendous trap game. Because
I'll just tell you now, I'm going to take the Panthers to cover.
Like, yeah, minus 10.5.
Yeah. I don't think the Chiefs are beating anybody by 10.5 right now.
I agree.
And like, let's be honest, the Panthers still aren't good, but like, they found something. Like something happened with the Panthers that they're still not a good football team, but like they're playing a heck of a lot better than they were at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. They've won 2 games.
Yeah, I mean they're on the
Saints.
Yeah, they're on a 2-game win streak right now. Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'm with you that minus 10.5. Is it absolutely possible? 100%. But I think that we can all sit back and agree that the Chiefs have problems. It'll be interesting down the stretch because now the pressure is going to be on them with Buffalo getting that win, that they've got to win for the rest of the season, because if Buffalo gets home field advantage, I think it's going to put the Chiefs in a precarious position if they have to go back to Buffalo, because that'd be the team that it's going to be hard to beat.
I don't see them fully imploding, like the Eagles did. Like, I think they're still going to eventually be okay. I mean, they're still working out things, obviously, in the run game. Like, Kareem Hunt's done a decent job trying to fill in. I mean, them losing Pacheco when they did, like, that just
he's a possibility coming back this coming week.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Pacheco's going to be coming back. Like, I think that they're going to I think they're going to be fine because, I mean, that defense is still playing pretty decent football. For me personally, it was that game. This was, I think, another team that needs to lose one more before the playoffs, in my opinion, is Detroit. Just trying to, get knocked off before a loss ends your season. Just level that playing field again, get rid of all the pressure to continue to keep on winning. And I think the Chiefs were able to get this, and I think they're going to go on a run. I do think they'll probably drop probably one more, if not 2 more. Because they got to play the Chargers again. They got to play the Broncos again at Mile High. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. They even got to play the Texans, and I don't think the Texans are there yet with all the injuries that they've had. But you never know. They just got Nico Collins back, so we'll see what happens.
That's the next game. Titans-Texans. You sort of mentioned the Texans. What are your guys' thoughts on the offense? I feel like that's sort of yes, they've had injuries, but especially on the offensive side of the ball, Nico coming back, they looked a lot better, but there's still something off about that offense as a whole.
I'm not tooting my own horn here, but like this is the Texans team that I kind of expected all season. This is why I picked them second. Now I thought the Colts were going to be better than they are, but this is who I think the Texans are. I think the little glimpse that we got last year was like this, oh man, and it was kind of a shock to everybody. That's why they did so well. But I think this is kind of the Texans team that is. I think this is exactly who they are. So they got a few pieces missing. They're still a good football team and can, compete with anybody, but there's definitely enough pieces missing that they could also kind of get upset or, screw something up and lose. CJ Stroud's had a mega regression. He's not. He's still playing well, but he's not getting away with some of the things he was able to get away with last year, which is typical NFL, right? When they don't have a lot of film on you and they don't kind of know what to expect, you kind of get away with things and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. Now they got that whole year of film. He's throwing a lot more picks. It's not like he's playing any worse. He's just not getting away with some of the things he was able to get away with last year.
Yeah, and I mean, just going to the last game as well. I mean, just to piggyback off what you're saying, I mean, their offense based off of Joe Mixon. Like, if Joe Mixon's not running, they're going to have the hardest time because the passing game's just not there as prevalent as it was last season. Because I went back, it was only a 10-point game going into the fourth quarter against the Cowboys, and again, they're being led by Cooper Rush. So, they're not that impressive of a team as I predicted them to be. I know they still got a winning record at everything. They're top of the division, but they definitely have the laps there on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll see what Nico does. Hopefully that opens up things for Tank Dell and they can start grooving again now that obviously Diggs been out for a month or so.
Little early to make this prediction, but I'll throw it to you guys. Who the Titans take in the draft, Carson Beck or Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, Will Levis to me, it's almost like Bo Nix at this point. Like, is he phenomenal? No, but like Will Levis's biggest issue is obviously he just turns the ball over a lot, right? Like, I think if they could develop him a little bit, like they've shown glimpses of like, dude, they could stick in ball games. Their defense isn't terrible. Their offense obviously is like their struggle spot, primarily because they don't have a whole lot on in the wide receiver spot to get downfield. But Will Levis has shown glimpses of like he can be okay if he just doesn't turn the ball over. So honestly, like if he keeps developing, I don't think they go after either one of them. I think they should address other needs.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree. It's just that's been the Titans' like mantra. They take Willis in the second round, they take Levis in the second round. They've constantly, trade away AJ Brown for Treylon Burks. They do dumb things that right now you
That's
sit
fair.
back in 4 years removed from it. You're like, oh, this is why you're bad. Like all this makes sense now. It's more not that they need. I agree with you. I would rather you go out and bring Joe Flacco in. Have a vet. Go get Jacoby Brissett. Like, is he going to win you a Super Bowl? No. Is he going to make you competitive? Yes. Like, it's better to go get an offensive lineman and go get some other pieces around you because the idea, which I just go back to Caleb Williams, like the idea that one player is going to dramatically change your team when you have other pieces missing. No. Like, I'm not sure if it was Pops on the episode or not, but when me and Maul were talking about it, like I'll just go back to the Bears. Look, we were wrong about Keenan Allen. Like we thought that he was going to be this, he's going to be this guy. And it's like, we should have set back and be like, no, Keenan Allen's old. Like,
yeah, and
my man's.
He's dropping a lot of balls too. Like, I mean, they'll hit him right in his hands and he'll drop them.
Dude's tugging a trailer out there.
That's a fact.
Yeah. And you look at offensive line, not good. You look at the Titans, I just go back to them. It's like you have a chance with a high draft pick to go out and get a bona fide, let's go get our new left tackle for the next 10 years. That's what the Chargers went and did with Joe Alt. It's working out pretty well for him. Like the Chargers have made good decisions, and we'll get to them for the Monday night game, but I just sort of look at both teams and it's like, you can't tell me the Titans and the Chargers weren't on the same playing field just 2 or 3 years ago. And you look at the digression, improvement, and the worsening of both of those teams. And you go, oh, well, how did they draft? They made better decisions, which I'll give the Chargers. They had their quarterback. They didn't have to go find a new guy. But decisions in the draft pay dividends. You're bringing up Bo Nix. That's Broncos, Raiders.
Yeah, and firing Mike Vrabel doesn't help either.
You ain't wrong. Broncos, Raiders, Denver's -6. Honestly, I can't figure out the Broncos team. Like one week they look good, next week they look absolutely terrible.
I attribute that to they've got a rookie quarterback. Like, they've got a really good defense. I don't think anybody's going to say that their defense isn't really solid. And to me, like, we were all making fun of Bo Nix and the Broncos after that draft pick. And I'll be honest, like, I'll just say it, like, I was dead wrong. He is playing. He didn't start out well, but right now, this moment, he is playing so much better than I was ever going to give him credit for. And I think it's just we're witnessing in that feeling of like, I don't know how to feel about it. That's just the development of a rookie quarterback. Like, that is what is happening with that organization. And I'll tell you what, like, if they keep on this path, they're doing fine. They're in a good spot. They're in a really good spot. Sucks that they got to play the Chiefs twice a year, but like, they're in a good spot. And let's be honest, they should have beat them.
Oh yeah, if that dude on the left side could just not be a mannequin dummy that just falls over when the rush happens, they probably do. Raiders, on the other hand, this
At least they got
situation's
Brock
about to blow
Bowers.
up. Dude, for real. There's not much to the Raiders that I can sit back outside of him and Max Crosby that I'm like, yeah, you know,
And
good luck.
This is why, though, like, I think we talked about this after the draft. When they took Brock Bowers, it was like, I hated the pick, not because I don't like Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is playing exactly how we all thought Brock Bowers was going to play. He's amazing. He's fantastic. But the problem is, it doesn't matter because he's a tight end. Like, it does not matter. Now, I don't think they were in a position, maybe they could have moved up and took somebody different, but like, they weren't really in a position by the time it got to them to have that game changing quarterback. There was nobody there for them to take. But like, this is why just taking that tight end is like, you set your season. It's like a preseason ranking essentially in college. Like, your path is kind of already projected for you. They knew they weren't winning anything. They brought in Gardner Minshew because it was like, yeah, we got to have somebody take the snaps, but like, they knew they weren't going to be competitive. So yeah, they've got Brock Bowers. Maybe whoever they bring in next year will be able to throw him the ball better and they can win some games. But like, that is what it is. The Raiders are that when you don't have a quarterback and you don't go get anybody, this is what you get.
Yeah, and I think this is where, I completely in the preseason messed up. I thought Antonio Pierce coming in, he was going to be able to change the culture around a little bit and just, get some guys to play for him. And obviously it's blown up in my face. And, the Broncos aren't at the bottom of the division like I thought they were going to be. Looking at Bo Nix the last couple of games, I mean, besides the Baltimore Ravens beating them 41-10, he's been, obviously he's won 3 out of the last 5. And then just that game against the Chiefs, I mean, let's be honest, like we've already said it. They had plenty of opportunities to win that game. And we always know this, that's why I brought it up. The Chiefs have to go to Mile High, at the end of the season. It doesn't matter how good or bad the Broncos are, they always play the Chiefs tough. And the fact that they almost beat them in Arrowhead, like I could almost see that the Chiefs are going to lose at the end of the season to the Broncos, especially if Bo Nix continues to progress the way that he is. I mean, he's thrown 2,300 yards. I think he's leading the rookies out of who's got the most passing yards right now. So he's playing really good football.
That's why I think Belichick's probably their number one guy in the offseason. I think with Brady, everything there, if they're going to take a swing on someone, it'll be Belichick. Of all the NFL teams, that's the Raiders make the most sense, in my opinion, just from the standpoint of the organization, everything else, like, they need a ton of help. They're at the bottom. No one especially when you look at the other 3 teams, Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, all those 3 teams are going up. They're in a long-term build. The question is does Belichick live long enough to see that build through? I don't know. That will be the biggest hurdle with hiring Belichick, but I think Antonio Pierce's time on the Raiders will come to an end by season's end. Just gut feeling. Next game up, Niners, Packers. You sort of talked about it, Maul. All the injuries for the Niners going to Green Bay. Green Bay's -2. We'll see if Jordan Love can break the Aaron Rodgers trend of losing to the Niners. He lost to them last year in the playoffs. Green Bay's -2 for all the injuries that San Francisco has. Green Bay's not heavily favored in this game. What do you guys see the outcome being?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they almost lost to the Bears last week. You know, like besides, like let's go back. You know, they had Christian Watson, and that was only because Jalen Johnson fell. When Christian Watson caught that catch for 70 yards, I think it was, got him down to the 10 right before they scored to go up 20-19. Jalen Johnson fell. So, you know, as far as that goes, you know, that's just one of those, you know, plays that were unexpected, unscripted. You know, for that big of a gain. And then, you know, I didn't bring it up, but I'll bring it up now. I mean, it was a penalty when they blocked that field goal because they blew up the center, you know, so you're not supposed to touch the center. It's already been said. But I think the Green Bay Packers are still a liability. You know, last year they squeaked into the playoffs almost even. You know, the Bears had the chance last year to beat them, to get them not to go to the playoffs. And I think they're kind of the same team this year. Yeah, the record looks good, but also they haven't played the NFC yet. So outside of the Bears, like we're going to start to see, you know, just how good the Packers are coming up as they're going to face the Lions again and the Vikings, Bears again, going through the washer and dryer. So again, we addressed it with the 49ers. They've just been unlucky this year with the injuries. I don't necessarily think I saw a stat the other day. You're really going to hate this one, Dutch, but Nick Bosa, when he's off the field, the defense is giving up like 7 yards of play versus when he's on the field, they're only giving up like 2 and some change. So you really hate that stat. But Nick Bosa is making a little bit of an impact because he's the only guy on that defensive line for the 49ers. As far as the game goes, I mean, Vegas is saying it go either way. I give the edge to the Packers just for the sake of all the injuries that the 49ers are dealing with.
It's not hate on Bosa. It's more, and I think you'll agree with this. Like I compare him with TJ Watt. It's like Watt in the moments where the game needs a play made, Watt's the one making the play. Like when there's a sack needed to be made, but it's like when I look at both of those Super Bowls against Mahomes, when it's like when they needed a defensive player to make the play,
and
Bosa wasn't there. Yeah. Which he's not a liability. That's why they let Chase Young go. Like he's someone that's definitely going to improve your defense, but the idea of him being the best defensive player in the league and getting paid like it, I think is a far stretch.
This game's a toss-up to me. At like 5 different points throughout the season, if you would have like given me this matchup, I would have probably swapped back and forth 5 different times. You know what I mean? Like after that week 1, when the Packers played the Eagles, even though they lost, they looked really good. And you're like, yeah, I could totally see the Packers going far. Then they lose Jordan Love and win 2 games with Malik Willis. Let's not forget that, right? So we're talking about their record looks good. And it's like, yeah, that's because they were able to win with Malik Willis. But then again, they've had times where you're just like, gosh, they do not look good. Like they're struggling. Same thing with the Niners. Now they're getting Christian McCaffrey back. I know Ayuk's out, but he hadn't done much. So if Purdy can do basically what Caleb Williams was able to do last week, which I don't think is like a super tall order, I would give the edge to the Niners just because I do think they're a better football team. However, like I said, it's a toss-up to me, honestly. I mean, like I could see it going either way because the NFC West has proven multiple times throughout this season that like they can get beat by anybody or, you know, get come back on. Like I can see that happening. Niners are going to get up big early and then let the Packers come back on them at the end to win the game.
Things that we never thought we would say. Matchup that will determine for the time being first place in the NFC West. Cardinals Seahawks. Cardinals 6-4, Seahawks 5-5. You know, Seahawks get a huge win last week against the Niners. Gino running it in has a big moment, but both teams right now are battling them and the Rams for first place. San Francisco is actually in dead last right now in the division. What do you guys think in terms of Cardinals Seahawks?
Man, it's tough because it's like what team? This is two teams that are like, all right, which team's going to show up this week and play? So they're so unpredictable. And I'm looking at Geno's stats just because we always know that he's been a not prolific passer, but he's been a decent passer. And then you look at his touchdowns to interceptions, and they're even. He's even at 11 with both, and it's just like, well, he's turning the ball over a lot too. He had the fumble, against the Lions a couple weeks ago where they could have potentially won the game or gone up and been competitive in the game. And then you have something like last week where last second he won the game. But I can honestly argue that the 49ers had their opportunities to put it away, and they just did not capitalize on those moments. So, and then on the other side of the ball, Kyler is playing really decent ball, in my opinion. It's just a matter of if the playmakers around him are going to be available. And, this week he gets James Conner back. So I personally, I would give this advantage to Arizona. But who knows? Maybe they go to Seattle and the 12th man drowns them out.
I'm with you, Pops. I don't think either one of these is a great football team. I think the Cardinals, if you put a gun to my head, I'm going to take the Cardinals. I could see this, though, kind of being one of those like sneaky good games, really high scoring games, just because it's like they have the pieces there, but they're neither one of them is like a great team, especially on defense. So I could see it being like an absolute shootout and like coming down to this. And again, I just said it, like the NFC West is just like, you don't know, like the fact that the Seahawks beat the Niners last week, like you just never know. So I could see it being like a sneaky good game from like a competitive standpoint, primarily just because I don't think either team's very good.
Fact.
Makes sense. Sunday night game, Eagles Rams. I feel like this is the Rams have been coming on strong here lately, but I feel like this is a big test for the Eagles more so than it is the Rams.
Exactly.
What are you guys' thoughts on the game?
I think the Eagles are getting better. Like I think you brought it up with like the Lions and the Niners as far as like carryover from last season. I think the Eagles had probably the worst carryovers from last season because we all know they're talented. I mean, like you can't look at any position on that roster and not just go like, man, those guys are phenomenal. They started out the season though. I mean, they beat the Packers, but like after that, they were looking rough in like multiple games, and you're just like, gosh, they cannot escape that end of last year's slide. And I think they're finally starting to kind of come out of that. So I think they're on the up and up. I do agree with you. Like if they want to be the first place team, like we all think they should be, this is a big test for them. Whereas the Rams, they're like, we're 500 and still right in our division. Like everybody is 500 in that NFC West division right now. So I think the Eagles are a better football team. It's like as long as they can keep that same trajectory, they just have too many weapons on all sides of the ball to not win this game.
I don't disagree with obviously the talent that we've seen this year being showcased by the Eagles, but Jalen Hurts is hurt and Devontae Smith is hurt. So whether or not they come off the injury report or not, there's two of their 5 playmakers out of their skills positions that are hurt, and one of them touches the ball every single snap. And I'm gonna take the best quarterback in the NFC out of Matthew Stafford. He's been doing this for years. He's got his weapons. Like I take the Rams at SoFi. This is not necessarily where the Eagles start their. I guess it is. It's the end of season slump where they start dropping stupid games that they probably shouldn't be losing. But I think the Rams, they're that spicy team that nobody wants to mess with. They're probably not going to. I mean, based on how bad the NFC West is this year, they still have the chance to make the playoffs. But if they lose any more to where they don't win the division, obviously they're not going to be getting in. So, dude, give me the Rams. I'll take Matthew Stafford on Sunday night.
Then final game, the Harbaugh Bowl yet again. Ravens go to SoFi, play the Chargers, who came off a a near collapse against the Bengals, but in the final, I don't know if you guys saw, it was like in the final 2 minutes, both teams had a 75% chance to win the game, and just no one wanted it until the Chargers pulled away. Baltimore right now is -3. I feel like this game's going to come down to who runs the ball better, Baltimore or the Chargers. What are you guys' thoughts?
I mean,
Go
I
ahead,
want to
Pops.
highlight the fact, the guys on a bye week this week, dude, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are playing out of their minds right now. And it just goes to show our argument with the whole defense. Like, if you have no defense, it doesn't matter who's on that offense. And we're seeing it, case in point. Maul, I'll let you get back to your point now.
Well, I'll kind of tag along what you said. Like, when Burrow puts up like 480 yards and 4 touchdowns, but they lose to the Ravens, and then the Lions throw 5 interceptions but still win the game. Like, all I can think of is that meme of that dude like standing in the crowd with his hands on his hips, just like, what do I got to do? Like, what's going on here? Like, to me, the Chargers. I've been talking about all these bad teams and saying, like, I don't think they're as bad as their record shows. The Chargers are the opposite for me. The Chargers and the Falcons fit the opposite bill, where it's like, I don't think they're as good as their record shows. Like, Dutch has had faith in the Chargers kind of, I don't know if it's all season, but he keeps telling me as we're, texting, doing whatever, talk about how good the Chargers are. I just don't see it, dude. I don't see how the Chargers keep winning games. Now, I've been wrong because they are winning games, but like, I don't think they are that good of a football team. Same way with the Falcons. Same thing I said about the Seahawks when they were like 3-0 at the beginning of the season. Like, there's something about watching the teams play that I'm just like, I don't see them really being competitive when it matters. Now, that's not to say that they can't come out and beat the Ravens, because the Ravens proved they can lose to the Browns. So obviously they can lose to anybody. But I just don't see that the Chargers are that good. And at -3, dude, that feels like free money to me. Like, the Ravens should be able to run away with this one.
So I'll tell you why, the Chargers have the record that they do. Their wins: Raiders, Panthers, one game against the Broncos. It was one score game. The Saints, the Browns, and the Titans. So like only beating those teams, and they beat the Bengals. Sorry, they beat the Bengals obviously just last week. Out of those teams that I said, over half of them are below 500. So that, to me, they should be winning those games. Now, yes, I do agree with you, Maul, in this standpoint. I love some of the pieces that they have. McConkey's coming out of his shell. He's starting to be the number one guy there. J.K. Dobbins ran the ball well the last game. I don't like their lack of identity with using Herbert. Herbert's not having these huge 300-plus yard games where you're just like, this is exactly why Harbaugh was drooling at the mouth with Herbert. Instead, Herbert's handing the ball off like he's J.J. McCarthy. And it's like, why are we not using this elite level talent to just sling the rock 60 yards downfield? And I get it. They've got a great defense. They said the last time, one of the defense, I can't remember the stat, but essentially it's a Jim Harbaugh defense, only giving up 13 yards, or 13 points a game. Like, it's their defense is what's winning these games for them, in my personal opinion, because the offense is still trying to find the identity that centers around Herbert.
My take on the Chargers for the Ravens, and I really, to hop on the train with Pops, of they've beaten bad teams. To beat a good team, the Chargers have to have an A game, and they have to have the Ravens come in and play bad. Mm-hmm. Like, I agree with Maul. There are too many. Like, I couldn't even name you who their tight end is for the Chargers. And you look at wide receiver, Quentin Johnson. It's like, is he going to catch the ball this time? He's actually caught the ball pretty well this season. Ladd's good, but I couldn't really tell you. I think that their number 3 is Palmer, but I'm not sure if he's even healthy or not. You look at running backs, J.K. Dobbins, I know hurts the heart for me because me and Maul were doing his fantasy draft, and we were sitting there looking at Dobbins, and it was like it had been a home run hit to take, but both me and him were both like, well, this dude continues to get hurt. This year he's just gone off. Like, he's been one of the best running backs in the NFL so far. The Chargers, to me, are that team. I think they're incredibly well coached, and it will be rare to see the Chargers come in and really play a bad football game. I think that's sort of like where I like the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going to give teams their best shot, but for them to come away victorious from the Ravens, they have to have the Ravens play bad. Like, they're outmatched in different areas.
Was one thing I'll give the Chargers credit is like they came into the season with a game plan, and they're sticking to that game plan every single game. Play good defense, establish the run. Like, that's what they're doing, and it's working. They're able to control the ball. Maybe that's what I'm feeling. Maybe it's like we're not seeing these like big, huge plays and like all this offense that we're kind of now accustomed to these last few years. So maybe that's the feeling that I'm getting of like, I don't see them as a great football team. It does help that if the run isn't working, they have someone like Herbert to still sling the rock. But I think, Dutch, you hit it spot on. It's just like they're going to play their type of football, and like that's going to be their best shot in every single game. They just need teams like the Ravens to then also have a bad game for them to win. And it's possible. I mean, if the Ravens can lose to the Browns, they can lose to the Chargers for sure.
Well, and that's the thing. We've seen down the stretch, with them losing Patrick Queen, and some other key pieces on that defense. Like, we've seen that their defense is the liability on that team this season.
100%.
Yeah, their pass defense is trash.
Dude, and if you have a team that's just running it down your throat and you can't do anything about it, like, it is so hard to win a football game that way, just because it's demoralizing. You don't get in a good rhythm on both sides of the ball, and then like, they're going to control the clock, and that's hard to win.
100%.
I'm going to talk myself out of my own bet here.
Well, it's tough because Baltimore continually finds ways to lose games that they have no business in losing. And it's why my biggest thing with the Chargers is, and I still believe it, like, I think that given the right circumstance, the Chargers will beat someone in the playoffs that everyone's like, the Texans are like a prime example. Like, I can easily see them go to Houston, CJ Stroud struggling, but the Chargers are just running the football, and it just gets away from the Texans in the first half. It's like it's a 17-0 game because the Chargers are running the football and they can't stop at the second half, and it's over. And everyone's going to be like, man, the Chargers, and they'll get mopped the next week because of whoever they play. Like, they'll play the Bills or they'll play someone that's playing really well, and they'll get smoked. But the Chargers are a team that you sit back and I look at in the offseason, like, you give Harbaugh enough time to bring in some players. I think that there's a lot of NFL teams right now. I saw an article on it and I agreed with it, that are looking back at it and going, dude, we should have brought in Harbaugh. Like, the Falcons should have brought him in. Like, I think about what the Falcons have with Bijan and Kirk and all these guys. Like, you're telling me that the Falcons aren't a completely different team with Harbaugh in there? Like, the Falcons are probably one of the favorites in the NFC if he's there, with all the talent they have. I
can't not keep looking at the Ravens and just being like, oh, you've got like the returning MVP. Is he playing bad? No, he's playing probably better than he's ever played. Oh, you've got the best rusher in the NFL? Yeah. So the Ravens are undefeated though, right? No, they just lost to a guy that just kicks nothing but field goals. Like, what? Like, they just got beat by 6 field goals. Like, what? How do you have this team but then can't? You're right. Like, the Ravens aren't finishing games the way they should.
They're not. Yeah. Your point sums it up. Like, with all the first 2 points that you made, one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best running backs, you're like, oh, so they're winning games handily. You're like, no, they're struggling each and every week, which so much of it goes back on that defense. That defense has just, I mean, the Bengals a few weeks ago just absolutely lit them up, and they can't stop it. They went out and traded for a corner, and he got in the game last week, but it still wasn't enough, like you said, that for a team that only kicked field goals, if you're supposed to be the returning number 1 seed in the AFC from last year, they don't look it. So,
I mean, think about how many times you've heard like watching games like against like these top even in college, where like guys drive down and they can't seem to get it in the end zone, and like you always hear the announcer like, "Oh, kicking field goals against Alabama's not going to get it done." You know what I mean? Like, guess what? Kicking field goals against the Ravens probably is going to get it done. Like, just get down there and score points because they're going to somehow find a way to let it go.
just to tag on to that, I did see Gruden join Barstool Sports, and he was, I forget what game they were watching, but they didn't they instead of going for a field goal, which would have been a chip shot, they go for it and they don't get it. And Gruden's like, this is why I hate Matrix, like this, like analytics. He's like, no one tells you that when you don't get it, how badly it screwed you later in the game. He's like, that's why I would fire analytic guys. Like, take the points. The Steelers, you sit back and it's like, they won because they took the points. They took the field instead of going for it on 4th down. They took the guaranteed, in their mind, 3, and at the end of the game, they had more points than the other team. Like, don't get me wrong, there were times that it's worked out for the Lions amazingly this year or the previous years that going for it has led to a touchdown and it's made sense. But at the same time, you can't say that and not look at San Francisco and say, if you had taken them stinking field goals, you probably were in the Super Bowl last year.
See, that's the analytics that I want to see. Like this whole like, oh, if it's 4th and 2, 75% of the time you're gonna get it. It's like that may be true, right? But like they don't talk about the 25% that you don't get it. It probably is losing you the game, right? Like taking the points, I want to know that analytic of the go, okay, 75% of the time you're gonna get it. But if you take the points now, you still have like an 80% chance to win the game, versus if you don't take the points now and don't get it, you now have like an 80% chance to lose the game. Those are the ones that I like. That's the analytics I want to know about. Not that's just like, oh, you got a 75% chance to get the first down, because that's really what they're running it off of. And yes, in your mind, you're thinking like, okay, well, if I get the first down, I got another shot at a touchdown. It's like, sure, but like just getting that first down doesn't win you the game. Like you need the points to win the game. And when you don't take the points, that's going to lose you the game.
It's happened more to, yeah, that's a great point, that you never see that analytical side of it, that ESPN should be throwing that up at the bottom. Hey, if you don't take the points here, your percent to win the game went from 80 to 65%. It's like, that's the time that you go, maybe we should take points. But that wraps up the NFL for this week. You guys got anything else?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Time to pull chalks. We'll see you next week.